Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, warshippers of all ages, welcome back to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're continuing our first look series at the new Dutch cruiser line currently in super testing by taking a look at Tier 6's Kijkduin. Now, Kijkduin is a really, to me, this is where the line starts to get really interesting, right? Tier 6 is where the Dutch will gain access to their airstrike consumable. Well, it's not a consumable, their airstrike ability, right? It is part of basically the main armament of the ship. So this is the first chance you're going to have to learn how to use it and see what it does. On top of that, this is an all-gun cruiser. There are no torpedoes here, and she does lack a little bit of the utility that you might hope to find out of a light cruiser. As we look over her consumables, we'll talk more about that. But let's kind of peel back the layers and look at this ship, compare her some of her competition, and see where she stands. Starting off, survivability, 32,000 hit points, coupled with 19% torpedo protection. 32,000 HP is pretty solid, right? There's a non-zero number of Tier 6 light cruisers that don't even crack the 30k mark. Perth, La Galissonnière, He, Leander, Dallas, okay, Molotov, and Makarov. So yeah, I mean this is not bad. This is kind of up where you'd see This is like Pensacola, right? Pensacola is 32,700 HP. Trento, another heavy cruiser, 34,000. Graf Spee is only 39. So this is not bad. Like this is a fairly respectable health pool for a ship, a light cruiser in this matchmaking bracket. The 19% torpedo protection is not quite best in tier, but only because Graf Spee exists. It's certainly better than Graf Spee is kind of in her own little class, and you've got all the other cruisers. And of all the other cruisers, Kijkduin has absolutely the best torpedo protection. But again, you don't want to be taking torpedoes because you just can't repair this damage, right? So you don't need to be avoiding them as best you can. Taking a look at her armor scheme, we've got 16 millimeters in the bow. Nothing really to write home here about. You will not be bouncing any battleship shells off of this bow. She does have 50 millimeter belt kind of for the forward in here, 75 through the mid, and then I'm betting it tapers back to 50 again, back toward the stern. Yeah. Oh, she's actually got 60 all over the stern. Looks like she's got a 75, I would say a 75 millimeter plate over the steering gear room. That might be over the steering gear compartment, the actual steering gear a little farther aft, because the rudder pintle would be farther aft back here. But that might be where the hydraulic machinery that runs the steering gear actually is. That might explain why there's this extra armor plate is right here, 75 mils. But yeah, that's actually quite nice. She's got 60 mils of armor all the way back to the back of the ship. That actually would make her a pretty solid little kiter. I should look at the gun angles when we talk about the main battery. I'll make the effort to go over there and have a look at that and put that info in when we start talking about our main battery. Quick look at the Citadel, just so you can get a sense of how bad it is. And there she is. There's the Citadel. It is, like we were noting on Celebes, it does sit quite low in the water, but it is incredibly long. I mean, again, you're talking about what must be about 85% of the full overall length of the ship. Again, you've got a little bit of the spaced armor action going on. So she's got the 75 to the 50 millimeter belt is exterior. She does have a little bit extra armor here on the inside, another 30 mils on the actual Citadel bulkhead itself. So you might have the ability to catch the occasional, shell ricochet bounce around in that spaced armor section that would be a full pin or a torpedo protection hit rather than a big Citadel hit. But you can't really rely on it, right? At the end of the day, this is still a light cruiser. It's still going to get slapped around by things bigger than it on occasion. Well, I mean, regularly, let's say. Maneuverability and concealment, 33 knots on the surface, 720 turning circle, 9.0 rudder shift. Not too shabby. Pretty comparable. Most cruisers in this tier bracket are in the 32 to 33 knot range, so this is very competitive. I'd say that based on her speed and turning circle, she's going to feel a little bit like a Nürnberg, maybe. At the same time, she looks like she has more overall length than Nürnberg, which might make her feel a little worse. She certainly has more beam than a Nürnberg does. Like Nürnberg doesn't have nearly this much beam, I don't think. So yeah, I mean, she might handle that way. At least on paper, that's kind of the nearest kind of comparison that I can come up with. Rudder shift is actually a little on the slow side for the tier, but 9 seconds is still not that bad. You're not going to notice significant difference between this and another ship. Excuse me. 11.9 detection on the surface is respectable. When you rig this ship for stealth fully, that gets her down to 10.4. Not awful. Again, fairly pedestrian, very middle of the road here. Very typical of what you'd find in the tier. Talk about the main battery. So just like Celebes, Kijkduin is built on four main battery turrets. 2 forward, 2 aft. These are once again 6-inch guns. These are 152mm 53 caliber barrels. 2 forward and 2 aft. They reload a little faster than Celebes guns. You see they're 8 seconds as compared to 7 seconds on these as compared to 8 seconds we saw down at tier 5. And the HE shell does hit a little bit harder, only 50 points up than we saw down at Celebes. Fire starting potential is the same, penetration is basically the same, and so on. 14.6 kilometer range is definitely going to feel a little bad at tier 6. Now, it's not going to feel Leander or Huang He bad, right? But it is going to feel a little on the low side. You'll find quite a number of 15, 16 kilometer range cruisers in this matchmaking, and unfortunately, Kijkduin is not going to be one of those. This main battery range is comparable to, say, like Dallas, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's gonna feel a little bad. This is gonna be something you're gonna have to play around, especially with that stealth. Again, stopping around 10.5. You've got a very narrow window which you can fire and before you're detected, right? Like in the sense of that gap between your force detection and your firing range is only about 4 kilometers. Let's have a look at her AA defense, because again we have no torpedoes. No torpedoes. That is not a thing on this ship. No Dutch cruiser has torpedoes. Mid-range aura, you see there, 3.5. Right here. There we go. 3.5 kilometers. Really, really solid AA aura on this ship. Like, look at that. That is insane. 427 continuous damage. Ouch. That is just lunacy, kids. That gives this ship an incredibly punishing mid-range aura. Now, she has no flak. She is literally the only tier 6 cruiser in the game with no flak at all. So you're not going to dissuade a carrier player from striking you, but if he comes in for a run, he's going to lose some planes, right? He's going to spend enough time in this aura that he will absolutely take damage. Even Vesser, right? Especially if it's a tier 6 carrier. Tier 8 carrier, some of the faster planes, Zeppelin or Parseval, for example, might not notice this so much. But like the Brits, for example, yes, you have slower planes, they're tankier, but they're taking a lot more damage punishment for being in that middle aura than they would for most other ships in this matchmaking, in this tier. So that is kind of noteworthy. She's not, again, like I said, she's not going to dissuade anybody from striking her, but she will absolutely, they'll know they've taken losses. And for the first time, ladies and gentlemen, we come to a tech tree ship with the airstrike ability. Now, let's start talking about how we can compare these as we go forward, okay? You see there, you have one available flight on a 60-second reload. So you have to think of this as essentially another part of your main battery armament, just like Dutch cruisers don't have torpedoes, they have this, okay? So once a minute, you can push your button and drop an airstrike. Now, the difference is that, of course, as you go up in tier, the number of planes, the number of bombs, the damage, the penetration, all of these numbers will be different, will change a little bit, and so on. So let's talk about the relevance of those within the matchmaking bracket that each one of these guys is going to find themselves in. So starting at tier 6 here with Kijkduin, we're bringing in 6 planes that each drop 4 bombs on 1,850 damage a pop. All right, so that's 24 bombs into the targeting reticle. That's not a lot, if I'm honest, right? I don't know if you've seen, have they shown any video of this stuff? I don't know how much I can talk about, but I'm not convinced this is a lot. Like, when you go look at some of the high tier ships, they saturate those areas, right? Like, we've seen clips we've seen clips of people playing the Galissonnière, the tier 10 cruiser on Twitch and stuff. This is, kind of in the same, I don't think the reticle is going to be a different size. I don't know. I haven't played this ship, but I'm betting the reticle size doesn't change. You're just putting fewer bombs into it. Now, the 5,800 damage is before penetration, of course. Has to take into account pen values. 32 millimeters of armor, though, that is really noteworthy. That is really noteworthy, because what it means is that these bombs will basically pen through the deck of, I think, just about every tier 6 battleship not named Ismail. and the majority of Tier 7 battleships as well. So if you, and let's be honest, there are a lot of Tier 6 battleships that ain't that fast. So yeah, if once you get good with this consumable, I think you can do some real work with it. I feel like there's going to be a learning curve here, just like learning to use any other new mechanic in the game. And then once you've kind of wrapped your brain around, okay, this is the kind of lead time I need to give it, and this is, so on and so forth. These are the kinds of targets I need to seek out with them. I think there's a lot to like about these airstrikes. The planes can be shot down, so that is something else to consider. But at Tier 6, you're not going to find a lot of Tier 6 ships that have significant AA. And again, like I said, the damage and the penetration means that just about anybody you land some of these bombs on, they're going to feel it. They're going to feel it. Now, when you're up here to Tier 8, the rules start to change a little bit. You'll find fewer battleships that you can punch through the deck of. But with this 32 millimeters of pen, you will still be able to beat up heavy cruisers. So say there's a nice stationary Baltimore on the enemy team, and he's snuggled up to an island with his radar covering a cap. If you're able to work into a position to drop bombs on him, he's going to feel it. Every single one of those bombs that lands, he will absolutely feel. So this airstrike ability has some interesting tactical connotations going on with it, right? There's a lot to like about it, but I, like many, I am a little concerned that there might need to be some limits placed on it so that you don't see divs of these ships running around just molesting people with it. That's kind of where I kind of look at it like, that doesn't feel like a good idea, guys. Maybe we should look into that. Looking at consumables, just like Celebes, it's a ship in World of Warships. We have damage control party. We have access to standard Tier 6 Hydro. And then with the aircraft facilities, you have a choice between spotter aircraft and fighter. I will say that the fighter is an intriguing option because, again, it might function as your kind of long-range aura and give your mid-range aura a little more time to pick up some extra damage. Just make the whole package might be a little more impactful, let's say. So that's worth noting. Spotting aircraft, it's hard for me to judge how useful this is going to be until I've fired the main battery. In the sense of, we know the shell velocities are pretty good, right? Like with 900 meters a second, like that's not too shabby. But we don't know about shell arcs. We don't know about shell groupings. Not quite sure how accurate the ship is just yet. So it's hard to judge without playing the ship how useful the spotter aircraft is going to be. My experience is that spotting aircraft on light cruisers tends to not be overwhelmingly good. So I suspect that most people will probably opt for the catapult fighter. But your mileage may vary when you get around to finally playing the ship. Anyway, guys, there we go. That's our first look at Tier 6 Dutch cruiser Kijkduin. We'll be continuing this series over the next few days as we start looking at Indracht, Haarlem, Johan de Witt, all the way up to the top of the line. Okay? Anyways, guys, wash your hands, be safe. I'll catch you next time.